Good morning. I'm Dirk Elmendorf. I'm one of the past chairs. There we go. I'm one of the past chairs of the Witte Museum here, and a big fan of solar. And today I get to bring to you two great presentations. First, from Richard Estrada. He started Statewide Renewable in 2017. Statewide offers its clients a focused approach to solar energy. Its first project was developed in South Texas in cooperation with the oldest continuously held ranch in Texas and the Magic Valley Electric Co-op. The success of this project has led to numerous opportunities with other utilities. Prior to starting Statewide Renewable, Richard had been with Circular Energy since December of 2010. He helped to sell, develop, and manage over $15 million in solar projects in Texas alone. He also helped Georgetown Municipal Energy to develop their solar program and solar incentives, and this has helped Georgetown learn how to get funds released from the DOE to their jurisdiction members. This relationship with Georgetown has helped Richard hone his skills in navigating government restrictions and bid while showing the city of Georgetown how feasible solar energy can be. This process led to Georgetown becoming 100% dependent on renewable energy. I think of you as the man who does solar by the acre, and so I'm very excited to hear what you have to say. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hold your applause till the end, right? You're not sure if I've earned it. So, yes, make sure this works. There you go. All right, who we are. We're going to go over who we are, what we offer, some updates on the industry. There's been a lot of not so good things happening in the industry over the past year, and we'll go over that. A little Solar 101, and then where we see the industry going, and a little bit about us. So I've got 15 minutes, so I got to cram a lot of stuff in here. All right. So who we are. We when I say me, I started in solar in 2010, and I was getting on roofs, and I don't do well on roofs, but we did it, and measure them out, make sure we're not in the shade, make sure we've got the correct azimuth, and we're pointed south so that we can maximize our production. A lot of fun. Very quickly transitioned from residential into commercial, and some of the projects we worked on were for Austin, in the city of Austin were Tito's, Peer1 Education. They used to run the tax tests for the state, and so we did one of their big facilities in North Austin. Some hotels. We've done a variety of commercial projects. One of the projects I take a lot of pride in was Tito's Vodka. What happened there is the company decided they needed some green renewable energy as a marketing effort. And what we taught them was that we could actually lower their energy costs. And so it wasn't just for marketing, it was a practical effort. And so we were able to put in a 15-acre site across from their facility over by the airport in Austin. That system was built in 2016 and is doing great. In fact, they're talking about a phase 2 system out there. So, and now actually what they've done is they've turned it into an agricultural site. So they have sheep. They have they're raising some crops. So they get ag exemptions, and they create food for the sheep, and then that way they don't have to mow the yard either, so that's nice. Yeah. All right. So what we offer. One of the first things that I will tell any client is the hardware has to be the best hardware out there. The reason being is that solar is a 25-plus year endeavor. Right, so it's not a 5-year, it's not a 10-year. It needs to last long term. And so, if you're installing subpar equipment, then you're going to have problems. It's not early on we thought we'd plug it in and walk away, and that's just not the case. Maintenance is very, very important, and so we've put together operations and maintenance programs where we come out every year. But it's even more than that. We install monitoring with every system we do. And the monitoring is interactive, so it makes it fun for our clients. You can go online on your smartphone, on your computer. You can see what your system's producing, see how much CO2 it's offsetting. And you can, on a practical level, see how your system is operating in terms of efficiency. and it'll let you know if it's not operating as intended, and we can go out there and fix anything that's wrong. So the technology platform, one of the things we're doing right now, we're doing some projects for a utility in South Texas, Magic Valley Electric Cooperative. And so we'll have a total of 6 of these Tito-sized sites, anywhere from 15 acres up to 40-acre sites. I call them strategic solar because they're not 1,000-acre farms out in West Texas, and they're also not, rooftop. It's kind of a middle ground solar. And the reason that we've developed these with Magic Valley is that we're essentially lowering their peak demand costs. So one of the things that, if you actually take a look at your bill, one of the biggest charges you're going to see is your peak demand. And the funny thing about it is that ERCOT bases that bill on 4 hours out of the year. So they take 4 hours, and that's 45% of your bill for the following year is based off of 4 hours. And that is from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. for your 4 coincidental peaks. So for the 4 highest use days in June, July, August, and September. They average those 4 hours, and then that's the peak demand profile for the following year. And the higher it is, the higher your peak demand costs are. So what we're doing is we're installing these strategic solar arrays for one utility. We've done 2 of them so far, and they're working great. We're helping to lower their peak demand profile. We're also providing reliability and localized generation, and lowering their overall cost for the utility, and doing so well that they want 4 more sites. Now, to get back to the technology platform or monitoring, what we're doing is we're actually integrating our solar output with the utility's reporting system. It's called a SCADA network. And so they'll be able to get in real time or 15-minute intervals what's going on with the solar array, so they can either add energy to the grid or not, or remove the energy, so they can keep it at a perfect level and maintain reliability in their service area. So it's important for us at Statewide for the end-to-end service. So you can kind of tell we're not going to build a system and then run away. We're not like roofers after a hailstorm, So we're here for the long run. So we had to do that for James, or else for the McCown Ranch, or else they wouldn't have trusted us, right, James? Yeah. So that does mean a 25-year commitment to each project. Hopefully, I'll be around for a full 25 years, but at least the company will. All right. So we talked a little bit about premium components, and this is a little too much information. If anybody's interested, I love to jump on the phone and talk solar for an hour or two. So give me a call if you ever want to talk premium components. All right, what's happening in solar? The modules or panels and the inverter pricing is going the wrong way. We're all getting hit with supply chain. And really, there's a lot of different reasons for that, but just to make it simple, what's happened in the market is that China has become the dominant manufacturer for solar components or hardware globally. And right now, with COVID, and they, you saw Shanghai shut down for 25 million people, closed, or what do they call it, on lockdown. And so what that's done is it's raised our prices. On top of that, and this is not political, this is everyone, Obama, Trump administration, the Biden administration, they've all levied tariffs on these goods coming in from China. And so what's happened is the overall cost, so anything not made in China, they're raising their prices too to meet the tariff level. So for the first time in 15 years, we're seeing our component prices go the wrong way, where they're going up rather than going down. So it's a new world for us, and I don't know if it's a maturation of the solar industry, but I would say that we're not huge fans of it. Would you agree with that, Robert? Yeah. It's also making our lead time, so when we order equipment, It used to be 3 months, and we'd get our equipment in. Now we're looking at 6 to 9 months, possibly a year. Our transformers are a year out. Inverters are 6 months out. So this is all, like I said. But I think everyone is experiencing this across the country in terms of inflation and costs going the wrong way. So we talked about, I just talked about this, why it's going the wrong way. Just to give you an example, in Australia, they don't have the tariffs that we have on Chinese products. They're installing residential systems at around 90 cents a watt. And I think residential systems here are anywhere from $1.50 to $2 a watt, is that right? Closer to $3, $2.50 to $3, you see. So we're installing 25 megawatts at 4 different sites, which is roughly about 80 acres in total, and we're installing at $1.25 a watt. So in Australia, they're at 90 cents a watt on a residential system, which typically is much higher than these large-scale systems. So you can see what the tariffs are doing to us right now. Now, the negative, the other part of it is if they were using the tariff dollars to increase domestic manufacturing, then we could see that, but that's not what's going on right now. We're not really seeing a solution. So hopefully something changes soon, because for a decade we were trying to prove that solar could compete against the grid, and once we finally were able to compete against the grid, now they're making it difficult for us. So yeah. All right. I don't know if I'm pointing this the wrong way. So they did an analysis. I believe if coal shuts down, there was something in the state of West Virginia. There was around 4,500 jobs that would be lost if coal went away. If solar continues this way, you're talking about an impact of 50,000 jobs nationwide, and that's if we were continuing to grow, you'd see an increase of jobs. So it's really much more impactful than I think people realize nationwide. So this is just showing globally our installations, estimates and forecasts. So we're about 228 gigawatts of solar has been installed by the end of 2022, and it should be much greater than that if it wasn't for public policy and once again tariffs. Then we would have much more installed globally. I apologize, I'm having problems with this. There you go. Basic grid-tied solar electric system. So, yeah, I lost it. Take this one. I told you I run on too long. Can you hear me? Okay. So, does anybody have any questions on basic solar? Does everybody understand how solar works? Yep. Okay, good. We just go to the next one then. All right. Battery solution. One of the nice things about batteries is that if the grid goes down, your solar array will shut down. Whereas with a battery system, you can essentially island your solar array. And what that means is that it's essentially like putting up a drawbridge to the grid. The solar will continue working, the inverter stays on, so you continue to have power at your business, your home, until the grid comes back up, and then you lower the drawbridge, and now the system is behaving as expected. The issues we've had with batteries is that they're expensive, but the technology is coming, and in fact, in large-scale systems, larger systems, they are able to help. So in application, think of it as wind out in West Texas blows typically, that's my timer, blows typically at night when everybody's asleep and we don't need that energy. So the idea is that with batteries, we can capture that energy and then use it when we need it during the day. So another thing with solar is, and this is something we're implementing with Magic Valley, is that when clouds go overhead, our production drops. And they want to figure out how we can levelize that output. And so with battery systems, we can do that. So the battery would act instantaneously. If the production drops, we discharge the batteries, maintain that level, and then when the cloud goes over, we recharge the battery systems till the next cloud comes over. It's pretty complicated, but that's the direction we're going in right now. You're going to have much more localized generation, whether it be the community solar, or you have these strategic solar arrays that the utilities implement to lower their peak demand costs and increase reliability in their areas. So, well, listen, that's the end of my time, and I think we're going to have question and answer in a little bit. After. Okay, great. Hopefully I didn't use all the battery.
Thank you. That was a good macro overview. Yeah. Okay, so let me bring up our next speaker. There you go. See, they held a pause till the end. They still like you.
Yeah.
So, Robert Miggins co-founded Big Sun Solar to be part of the future of energy, and he believes moving to more renewable energy is not just the right thing to do, but it creates opportunities, jobs, and growth. Prior to founding Big Sun Solar, he spent 15 years in executive leadership roles at high-growth web hosting and cloud computing companies, first at Rackspace as Vice President of Sales and Product Development, and then at Peer1 Hosting as Senior Vice President of Business Development. He holds a BA in Economics from Washington and Lee University and an MBA from the McCombs School of Business. He is a native Houstonian. Robert lives in San Antonio with his wife and 4 kids, and it says he made the smart switch from being a Rockets fan to a Spurs fan back in '99. His timing on other things is rarely that perfect. And I would say, in the way of small disclosure, I was the first customer for Big Sun, for Go Smart Solar for rooftop, and then an early customer for Big Sun, which I think is what you're going to talk about.
Yes. Thanks,
Microphone?
Yeah. Good morning still. Whoa. Working. Okay, cool. Thank you, Dirk. Let's see. So before I even start with some of these slides and we dive in, let me just say something that I think is super important, and it seems to be a thread that ties all of these discussions together and why people got in their cars and came up to the Witte for yesterday and today, and that is climate change is a serious problem. And if we don't address it aggressively, we're in deep trouble. Just like the wildlife in Texas, just like droughts, just like all these other things that threaten the future of our state and the well-being of our children and grandchildren, that is the 800-pound gorilla. Jason and I, Jason Pittman, is he in the room? Jason is the co-founder of Big Sun Solar with me, and we've got a few team members here in the crowd. We are here to try to do our part, a small part, to try to save the planet. It sounds pretty lofty. We're not going to do it ourselves, but we want to be a part of that solution. So let me just say that as a backdrop. That's why we're here, is we need to, as a human race, we have to embrace solutions like this and like what Richard is doing and all of the above in order to help reverse the effects of climate change and dig ourselves out of this hole that we've dug for ourselves. So, and it's totally doable. There's a lot of, it's really easy to get doom and gloom, but I think that if we get serious about it, and it's completely achievable. All right, so I'll get off my soapbox and start to talk about solar. I think. Maybe I'll stay on the soapbox. I don't know. So I'll try to rip through these a little bit quickly. I do want to talk about this project we did here in San Antonio called Big Sun Community Solar. Dirk is a customer. Patsy is a customer. We've got, and actually every one of our employees, in the old days of tech, Dirk, we would say we're eating our own dog food. So every one of our employees gets community solar panels that we point to their bills as a perk as an employee. So not only do we have regular benefits like salary and health care, but we also help everyone reduce their power bills at home. So we'll talk about community solar, and then we'll leave some space for questions at the end. Here we go. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about solar. This project here is over off of I-10 East. This is a Rush Enterprises Peterbilt dealership. And so we love this idea of kind of 2-for-1 opportunities. So in this case, we're building solar carports that are part of our community solar project with CPS Energy that I'll describe here in just a sec. We also are providing covered parking for this Peterbilt dealership, and more importantly, hail protection. We're also, the third benefit I would argue is a little bit of a heat island benefit because we're covering up some very, very hot concrete and asphalt, which at scale can really make a difference in terms of the temperatures here in a city. So this is all, if you drive I-10 east towards Seguin, it's in between 410 and 1604 on the right-hand side of the highway. It's super visible. Those are really big, tall carports. If you can see, there's school buses underneath them. So one of the pretty cool projects that we're proud of. Okay, let's talk about just solar in the state of Texas. So the total amount of solar that's been installed is 14 gigawatts or 14,000 megawatts. The ranking is first nationally, and we're projecting to grow. So the additional growth, that's the total installed base is 14 gigawatts. We think that we're going to add an additional 23 gigawatts just in the next 5 years. So think about that in terms of an upsloping curve, notwithstanding some of the challenges we're seeing with cost. California is a great state for solar, so is Texas. You can imagine there's lots of land and lots of sunshine. Okay, let's talk about San Antonio. So the total amount of solar installed in San Antonio is 354 megawatts in 2021. That's just the amount that was installed in 2021 in 1 year, last year. It's the number one solar state San Antonio ranks first in the state of Texas. And nationally, the city of San Antonio is actually the fifth in total cities with solar installation behind, I think, Honolulu, San Diego, San Jose. Help me out, Angela. There was one more. And Los Angeles, yes. Thank you. So, great, lots of sunshine, lots of rooftops, lots of places where we can build solar. And we have a utility, CPS Energy, that has programs that incentivize more solar development. So that's what's fueled the explosion of more solar here relative to other hot parts of the state like Dallas and Houston, is that our utility actually has programs to drive adoption. Okay, so community solar, speaking of CPS Energy, this particular site is a Cavender GMC West. So this is off of 1604, kind of near Culebra Road on the northwest side of town. This is another one of our locations that's part of this program that we built out with CPS Energy. So again, we're doing carports. This car dealership can park their new and used car inventory under these hail shields and receive a reduction in their insurance costs because they're protecting their new and used car inventory, just like the Peterbilts. Okay, so let's talk about what is community solar. Hopefully I can... Okay, so a community solar, I won't even read this to you. Let me just describe it this way. If you want solar, but your dwelling is not suitable, let's say you live in an apartment. Let's say you live in Monte Vista and the HDRC doesn't really like old houses and meeting up with solar panels. Maybe you have trees that you don't want to cut down, which we wouldn't encourage anyway. Maybe your spouse doesn't like the way solar looks. Maybe you're not sure how long you're going to live where you're currently living. For any of those reasons, you might want solar, but where you live is not a good place to put the solar panels. So if something like community solar is available, what you can do is you can buy or subscribe to solar panels that would affect your bill at home, but the solar panel lives somewhere else. In our case, we're going to stick it in a very hot parking lot in a solar carport. We're going to sell that energy onto the grid and sell that power to CPS Energy, and then we will tell CPS where you live and how many panels Patsy has and how much her, 20 panels generated last month, and she sees the credit applied to her bill at home, even though the solar panel lives somewhere else. So we do all the maintenance, we keep them clean. Our neck is on the line with CPS Energy to make sure they're performing so that you're happy and satisfied with the investment and the payback we promised that you should achieve, et cetera. So it's a great way for anyone who has a CPS bill to enjoy solar without having to worry about, well, how long am I going to live in this house? Maybe we're going to start a family. Maybe this starter house is not going to be big enough, whatever the case might be. Maybe I rent my house, and so it's not my roof. I can't put something on someone else's roof. That's what community solar is. Okay, so Big Sun Community Solar is our project with CPS Energy. Now, unfortunately, this project is sold out. So we've built it. It's fully sold out and subscribed. It's performing. We're hoping that CPS does more of this in the future. They've said that they will, but with the winter storm and some other things, it's just been delayed. Our program with CPS Energy is for 5 megawatts. Think of that as about enough solar for about 500 residential customers or families in town. By the way, that photograph is at Brooks City Base on the south side of town. That red building is this thing called Cuisine Solutions, where it's a French company, and they make these egg cups that you can buy at Starbucks, these sous vide egg products and different types of, I think they make like all of the sous vide egg products for Starbucks, like west of the Mississippi or something like that, in that facility. So it's a brand new building. We put some carports out in front for their employees to park. Okay. What we did, and this is one example of it, is Jason and I and the rest of the team, we went out and found real estate partners that would like to have covered parking for their employees or for their new cars or used cars. And so we were able to bring them an amenity, which is covered parking, which just happens to be made out of solar panels. That building doesn't see the solar savings. We sell the power, actually, we connect it right here, underground, and we out to this pole, and then we sell the power out to CPS Energy. So people like Dirk and Patsy and our employees and the other 500 customers see the savings on their bill. Okay, so it's kind of interesting, but solar lives in that parking lot, but it doesn't lower that building's power bills. Oftentimes it does, and we love those projects too. In this particular case, they're just hosting solar panels in their parking lot. And what they get is a 2-for-1, which is the covered parking. Okay? I see some heads nodding, so at least some people are getting it. Hopefully that's good. So the benefits for the CPS Energy customer, you don't have to have a roof. We can apply solar credits to your bill. If you move, we can point the credits to your next location, so it's portable. For the real estate partner, they get the shade, right? So I think I might have covered that. Let's see if I can keep it going here. Okay. So this particular program, it's the largest community solar program in the state of Texas. We actually ended up using 12 different parking lots. So think of 5 megawatts is a solar farm, but instead of it being in one location out in a field, which is great, we love those projects too, we instead sprinkled it across 12 different big, hot, miserable parking lots sprinkled around San Antonio and made them 15 to 20 degrees cooler underneath those carports. We have about 450 customers so far. They have saved over $1 million in their collective power bills. And by the way, it was about 17,000 solar panels. Also, those solar panels were made right here in San Antonio at Mission Solar. If you think of that project that I told you, that long, boring story about the eggs, that's down at Brooks City Base. The solar panels were built about a half mile away at a place called Mission Solar, also here in town. Here's another image of it, of one of them. This is the Cavender GMC West dealership, and you just get an idea of what the undercarriage looks like. These are really cool. We also think it kind of dresses up a fairly, maybe a drab, forgettable building. You know, if you have 2 office buildings next door to each other, and one of them has sleek, modern, cool-looking covered parking, and the other one just has asphalt parking, you know, that real estate owner they might even charge 10 or 15 cents more per square foot for the office lease and then throw in a half dozen covered parking spaces or whatever. It creates a new amenity that they can do something with. So we think they're really cool. We probably spend too much time gazing at our own solar panels, but we really like the way they look. And by the way, this is a museum, right? We also think, we want kids to drive by these things in school buses and wonder, what is that? How did that come about? What are those jobs and careers like in the future of this city, right? So there's a lot of other benefits to it as well. If it's on the roof, oftentimes there might be solar on a building. Most HEBs have solar on them, but you wouldn't know that unless you spent a lot of time in Google Maps looking sort of downward. So we really like sort of the drive-by effect of being able to visualize solar around our city. Okay, I think there's only a few left. So one of the things that is underpinning the demand for solar is tax credits. So there's a federal tax program from the IRS that allows you to take a tax credit. It used to be 30%, now it is 26%. It's scheduled to taper down to 22% next calendar year unless the laws and the credits get extended. But this is a huge part, in addition to a local utility rebate program, this also has really driven solar growth nationwide. So it's really cool. So for every dollar you spend on solar, you get 26 cents back on your taxes. Okay, then there's a local utility. So CPS Energy has a local utility and has for over a decade a local utility program that's a cash discount. So you get a tax credit when you do your taxes next April, but you also get a cash discount. And if it's on your home and then you're putting it on your roof, it's up to $3,000 to offset the cost of that system. If it's in a commercial building, it scales up to maybe $80,000 depending on the size of that system. So if you think about it another way, if you spent $1 on solar, you would get a 26-cent tax credit. If you wanted to quantify the CPS rebate, that might be another 15 cents or 15%. So you stack those two together, you get close to maybe 40 or 50% of the cost of your system could be offset with incentives. Okay. CPS Energy is one of only a few utilities that actually has a rebate program. Austin Energy has one as well. It's done a little bit differently, but that has driven a bunch of solar investment in Austin as well. But in typical San Antonio fashion, we do more than Austin, but we just don't jump up and down and brag about it enough. Austin gets all the style points for being green and stuff, but actually there's more solar happening in San Antonio. And by the way, let's create some competition and let's bring Dallas and Houston into it as well. Here's another project we did downtown. This is a medical facility. So this is a place called PVA, Peripheral Vascular Associates. It's right in between Fox Tech and the Central Library. And so in their case, they bought these solar carports. We're connecting those assets behind their bill, and they're seeing the savings. So they own that asset. It looks just like our community solar program, but in this case, they are the customer as well. So they get the covered parking for their patients, and they get the solar savings. And I think, rough numbers, if I remember correctly, that was probably a 7-year payback on a 25-plus year asset. So the conversation we had with these doctors, the doctors group, the association, was, 7-year payback on a long-term asset, plus you get this really great amenity for your patients. That's a sort of a 13% return on your money. It was completely a financial conversation with them as a business. But that's a double-digit return on your money, notwithstanding or ignoring sort of the marketing and all the other effects of having solar. So it's a tough sell, but those are favorable economics, and that's one of the things. If somebody's just a financial buyer, if you work hard enough and stick around long enough, sooner or later, those economics will work for people because that's pretty attractive. It's made better by the local rebate. It's made better by the tax credit. Okay. I'll try to go through this quickly. So, for a business, if we're talking to a business, there's financial benefits, the tax credit, et cetera. You might take a market leadership. You might be able to tell a great story about how your business, you might have a sustainability plan that you've just drafted and you don't know how you're going to actually put anything into effect. So solar is a great way to get started. You might also like the energy independence. So if you pair solar with storage, you could island your system in the case of another winter storm and actually, add some resiliency to your building. or you might just mitigate your exposure to long-term cost increases of what we pay for power if you just strictly buy it from the utility. So if you put a solar system in front of your building and it offsets 50% of your power consumption, then the size of your bill with CPS just got cut in half. And so then every time CPS raises rates, sure, you still have some exposure, but you've cut that in half because you're still consuming 50% of what you're consuming, you're generating on your own roof or in your own parking lot. Okay. What are some challenges for solar adoption? Hopefully the Q&A is going to get more into like what should we be doing statewide, what we can do in rural areas of Texas. That's a lot of the theme of land management and sort of love to get into some of that discussion. There could be better state policy that actually drives statewide solar adoption rather than just groups like CPS Energy that drive adoption. Other states have a Public Utilities Commission that is driving adoption. Places like New York, Massachusetts, Minnesota, go figure, have state policy that's driving a ton of development, which we think is great. Hasn't happened yet at the state level here just yet with ERCOT and the PUC. The global supply chain is a huge problem right now, as Richard mentioned. Everything's cheaper and more expensive and takes longer to get here. That's it. Gosh. And Helen was picking up the stop talking sign right when I stopped. Thank you very much, everybody.
Do you want to come back up? So then now they'll take questions from the audience or from me. Okay.
Oh, no, you hold on.
Richard, when we were talking just when I was interviewing you about this conference, you mentioned about planting plants around the solar array and putting in bee boxes. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Right. So the last project we did it was in the city of McAllen, and it's I think the largest urban project in the state. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I can admit I'm wrong, but I believe it is. So a couple of things that we did, because we wanted to get it approved and get all the permits, and we want it to look nice. We don't want it to be a blight on the city. So we left all of the ring of trees around the site so that you can't really see it from the street, because it's not carports. It's not a functional improvement to a real estate project. So it is just a field of solar. And then on top of that, we put in natural grass, native grasses, so that you don't want a lot of birds in your solar array, but we do want it for environmental reasons. And so we put in 12 colonies of bees, so we're producing honey. And so it's only been there for about a year, so it's just getting going, but we planted a lot of native trees and whatnot at the entrances that'll bloom and provide nectar and pollen for the bees. So our hope is that over the next few years it does look lush and look beautiful and bring pride to the area. So yeah, and hopefully the honey makes money too. So.
My question is for Robert. So I was curious about how the supply chain issues are affecting Big Sun. You didn't really get to that, so I was just kind of wondering what that looks like for you guys.
Yeah, a great question. It's changing every week. So solar panels are more expensive. Steel, which we use for the carports, is also more expensive. Jason, about 20% more expensive, 23% more expensive. Not that we're counting. Solar panels that we would buy, at scale used to be sort of in the low 30 cents a watt. Don't worry about what that means, but it used to be sort of 32 cents. Now we're seeing stuff 55 cents, almost double. Also, you can't get them quickly enough because everything is delayed. So the cost of shipping containers, which is rolled into your cost of the panel, a lot of times the containers, they used to be just a 53-foot shipping container was $6,000. Now it's $24,000, so that's 4x. Curiously, also then desperation can kind of set in. So I'll give you an example. We we bought some solar panels. We were calling a normal representative, and he said, I'm out. I'm all sold out, but you might call, Helen or whatever. He gave us this woman's name in, I think, New Jersey. Next thing you know, and we called her, and she said, yeah, I've got some in stock. They're in the United States, by the way, so you can get them quickly. Here's your price, et cetera. Next thing you know, we purchased like, I don't know, $700,000 worth of solar panels from her because she had them. And then we realized, like, we don't know who she is. She has a Gmail address. So everything came, and, we were super happy. But you just look back on it and you go, that's kind of crazy. So everything is just very dynamic right now and difficult. But we also have a customer that's waiting. And so we want to help them be happy with their investments. So we don't want to keep them waiting.
Do you think that will slow the adoption of solar?
Absolutely. I think it will. Yeah, sadly, I think it will. There's also one last thing. Sometimes there's one, you mentioned breakers. One time we had an entire project built, and there was one breaker that was just limited worldwide. And I think we waited like 4 more months to turn this thing on because we needed one little breaker. So, it's crazy right now.
I just wanted to pick up on that. So, 12 years in the industry, this is the first time that our prices have gone the wrong way. And then on top of that, we couldn't get fixed pricing. We were ordering 23 megawatts of solar, which is, I can't remember how many containers, but yeah, we were being quoted $25,000, $26,000 per shipping container. But we had to commit to the equipment, and then after it was manufactured, because their supplies are increasing, their costs, and so then they would present us with the final price. And so we were supposed to get the client to commit to our pricing, but we couldn't get the equipment to commit to their pricing. So we couldn't order the equipment because you'd end up upside down and losing money on our project. So.
I was just wondering about the maintenance on a solar system. There's not many moving parts, but besides a hard rain to clean them off, what type of maintenance do you recommend?
Right. So the first and most important thing is the monitoring for me. I kind of geek out on it, but I'll get online every morning and look at all my systems and make sure they're all producing, and look at the last couple days of production, make sure they're hitting their numbers. So that's first and foremost. If you do have a problem, then you can send a tech out to figure out what's going on. Is it an inverter? Is it maybe some wiring issues or whatnot? But typically, it's the inverter is the most common point of failure. So, in terms of the cleaning the panels, no, you don't want any kind of chemicals. You just want water, and maybe use a squeegee to clean it. But yeah, typically if we haven't had rain in a while and it's pollen season, your panels are probably not producing as efficiently as they could be. So yeah, 10% even 5%. But the systems we're putting in are trackers, so they're moving, and so when it rains, they're typically at an angle that they clean a little bit better. But yeah, nice hose and squeegee would be good. So.
Another thing, just to build on that, speaking of monitoring, what monitoring allows you to do is to have eyes on your system, so you don't have to roll out there, and you can see without having to go out there, especially in some of these remote places. And if you have, let's say, if you have a project next to some construction, there might be more soiling, or if there's pollen. So monitoring would tell you, oh wow, that's going down 2% or 1.5%. What's going on? And then you investigate further. So the monitoring really helps you maintain, as close to 100% production as possible. Yeah, great question.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, then I'll send you out with the.
I wanted to comment. I forgot, Mayor Margaret, on the agriculture question. So right now, the Department of Energy has a project, a funding project that they're putting out right now to increase the adoption of farming under the panels. And so we're looking at some low-lying crops, things like melons and different vegetables that won't grow to the height of the panels, but that are below, and then that way you're doubling the use of the property. So We're actually in the middle of doing that, and so maybe next year we'll come back and tell you how that went, okay?
So my brother always likes to say that we're just 10 years hotter than everybody else, right? And we seem to be leading in all these things. What is the rest of Texas or the U.S., what should they learn from San Antonio and the things you guys are doing here?
That's yours.
Yeah, so I think I think the incentive, the local rebates really work. By the way, it's money well spent, because by inspiring people to put solar on their business roofs or in their business parking lots or on their own rooftops, or to drive a community solar project, what CPS is doing is trying to avoid building another huge, expensive gas-fired or coal-fired power plant. So it's money that at some point, with our population growth in the state, they would have to go fulfill that demand. Why not do it, distribute it across the rooftops of San Antonio with a little incentive, instead of having to issue bonds and build a power plant that has all kinds of clean air issues in addition to climate issues.
I was going to say, and also water. There's a bunch of water stuff that goes on. When you build those big plants, the stuff has to be cooled with water.
Yeah.
And it's not great.
I think, we are we live in a municipally owned utilities district. We don't get any choice. We can't choose who we buy electricity from, but CPS does a good job of keeping our rates low, and then they have these other programs that serve people in the community that would normally be left behind. So I'm a big fan of it. I think it works. By the way, quick plug for CPS Energy. They take, I think, 60% of their profits and give it to the city, because the city owns the utility. And that pays for cops and firefighters and potholes and all kinds of stuff. So the funding from CPS Energy represents 60% of the city's overall budget. So had the city not bought CPS Energy 78 years ago, we'd have higher taxes in San Antonio, but what we have today is we have the profits from our utility actually just sort of 60 cents on the dollar. It sort of goes into our general. I might have that wrong, but it's a lot. It's like $300 million a year. So,
are you concerned about CPS getting rid of their residential solar rebates?
Yeah, I am, because I think at a macro level, it helps us being the community, avoid building more power plants. So I think in general, they've been good. Solar has historically gotten cheaper and cheaper. So over time, you won't have to have quite as generous of a program if solar's getting cheaper anyway. I can argue both sides of it. In general, I think the more the better. I think we need solar everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but we need to be embracing lots of solar in different shapes and sizes. And if CPS wants to have more programs that they extend, maybe less generously, I would be in favor of that. It does happen to attract some bad actors, kind of like the sort of roofing contractor, the rebate chasers. But I think if they policed those folks better, then people wouldn't sort of get taken advantage of, and they would still feel great about the big picture. The incentive program is a good idea. And so I am concerned, because I think if it just went away, then everything just gets sort of 15% more expensive. And this is ignoring the fact that everything else is getting a little bit more expensive anyway. So, I think if I had it my way, I think they would extend the rebate program, maybe make it a little bit less generous, but leave an incentive in place.
Anybody else? Closing? Well, thank you both very much. It was awesome.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you.